It's huge!
We're too small!
Have you ever felt too small for the battle you're facing? Too young, too inexperienced, too insignificant? Today we're going to witness one of the most extraordinary moments in human history. A moment when a teenage boy with nothing but a sling and 5 smooth stones stepped onto a battlefield where trained warriors feared to tread. But this isn't just a story about bravery. It's a story about faith that defies logic, about divine purpose that ignores human limitations, and about a God who specializes in using the unlikely to accomplish the impossible. This is the story of David and Goliath. The year was approximately 1010 BC. The Valley of Elah stretched between 2 opposing armies, creating a natural battlefield that would soon become legendary. On one side, the army of Israel, God's chosen people, led by King Saul. On the other, the Philistines, Israel's sworn enemies, masters of iron weaponry and military might. For 40 days, these 2 armies had been locked in a stalemate. But this wasn't a standoff of strategy or waiting. This was a standoff of terror. Every morning and every evening, the Philistine ranks would part, and from their midst would emerge a figure so massive, so terrifying, that grown men, trained warriors, would tremble. His name was Goliath of Gath. The Bible tells us he stood over 9 feet tall. Some scholars suggest he may have been closer to 10 feet. Imagine that for a moment. In a time when the average man stood around 5 feet 5 inches, Goliath was a giant in every sense of the word. His armor alone weighed 125 pounds. His bronze helmet gleamed in the sun. His coat of mail made of bronze scales covered him from neck to knee. Bronze greaves protected his legs. Between his shoulders, he carried a javelin with a shaft like a weaver's beam. And his spear, the iron point alone weighed 15 pounds. But the most terrifying thing about Goliath wasn't his size or his armor. It was his challenge. Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. This was a challenge to single combat. Winner takes all. The fate of entire nations balanced on one fight. And then came the words that would echo across the valley for twice a day for 40 days. I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. Silence. The Bible tells us that when Saul and all Israel heard these words, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Dismayed, greatly afraid. These were the same men who had won battles, who had defeated enemies, who had trusted God for victory. But now they were paralyzed. Not one man stepped forward. Not for 40 days. But while armies trembled in the Valley of Elah, 15 miles away in Bethlehem, a young man was tending his father's sheep, completely unaware that his destiny was about to collide with history. His name was David, the youngest of 8 brothers, not a warrior, not a soldier, a shepherd boy. In ancient Israel, being the youngest son meant something. It meant you were last in line for inheritance, last in line for honor, last to be considered for anything important. While David's 3 oldest brothers, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shema, had followed King Saul to war, David had been left behind. His job, to take care of the sheep and occasionally run errands for his father, Jesse. But David had a secret that no one else knew. Something had happened to him that set him apart. Years earlier, the prophet Samuel had come to Bethlehem on a divine mission. God had rejected Saul as king and sent Samuel to Jesse's house to anoint the next king of Israel. One by one, Jesse's sons had been presented to Samuel. Eliab, the eldest, tall, strong, impressive. Surely this was God's chosen one. But God said no. Abinadab? No. Shammah? No. 7 of Jesse's sons passed before Samuel, and God rejected them all. Finally, Samuel asked, "Are all the young men here?" Jesse replied, "There remains yet the youngest, and there he is, keeping the sheep." They sent for David, and when he arrived, this young, ruddy, handsome shepherd boy with bright eyes and a heart full of worship, God said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed David in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. But here's what's remarkable. David didn't immediately become king. He went back to tending sheep, back to the obscurity of the pasture, back to waiting, because God was preparing him. Those fields weren't just fields, they were David's training ground. In the solitude of the wilderness, with only sheep and stars for company, David learned to worship. He wrote songs, he played his harp, he talked to God, and he learned to fight. You see, shepherding in ancient Israel wasn't a peaceful occupation. It was dangerous. Lions prowled, bears attacked, and when they came for David's sheep, David didn't run. He testified later, "Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them." This teenager had fought wild animals with his bare hands and won, not because he was naturally strong, but because he knew God was with him. Now, on this particular day, Jesse called David and said, "Take for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp, and carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare." It was a simple errand, a food delivery, nothing special. But when God is writing your story, there are no simple errands. David obeyed his father. He left early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper, and took the supplies as Jesse had commanded. He came to the camp just as the army was going out to the battlefield with their battle cry. The timing was perfect. Divine timing. David left his supplies with the supply keeper and ran to the battle line to greet his brothers. And while he was talking with them, Goliath stepped forward. David heard the challenge, the same challenge Israel had heard for 40 days, the same mocking, defiant roar. But David didn't hear it the way everyone else did. Where they heard an unbeatable enemy, David heard an affront to God. Where they saw impossible odds, David saw an opportunity for God to show his power. The Bible says, "Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, 'What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that should defy the armies of the living God?'" Notice David's perspective. He didn't call them the armies of Israel. He called them the armies of the living God. This wasn't Israel's battle. This was God's battle, and Goliath had just made a fatal mistake. He had defied the living God. The men around David told him about the reward King Saul had offered: great riches, the king's daughter in marriage, and tax exemption for the winner's family. David kept asking. Word spread through the camp that Jesse's youngest son was asking questions about fighting the giant. David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard about it, and he was furious. "Why did you come down here, and with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." It was the voice of shame, of belittling, of dismissal. Those few sheep, your insignificant job, your unimportant life. But David had learned something in those fields with those few sheep. He had learned that God doesn't measure significance the way people do. David replied simply, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause? Is there not a cause worth fighting for? Is there not a God worth defending? Is there not a moment that demands courage?" David turned away from his brother and kept asking others the same questions, and eventually his words were reported to Saul. The king sent for him. Imagine this scene. King Saul, himself described as head and shoulders taller than any of his people, looking down at this teenager, this boy, this shepherd. And David looked up at his king and said words that must have stunned everyone in that tent. "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Saul's response was understandable. "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. You're too young, too inexperienced, too small." But David had a testimony. He told Saul about the lion and the bear, how God had delivered him, and then he said something that should echo in the heart of every believer who faces an impossible situation. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Past faithfulness, present confidence, future victory. Saul looked at this boy and finally said, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul tried to clothe David in his own armor, the king's bronze helmet, the coat of mail, the sword. But David had never tested them. He couldn't even walk in them. Picture it, this teenage boy swimming in armor meant for a man twice his size, clanking around the tent, unable to move. David took it all off and said, "I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them." Instead, he took his staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, and he put them in his shepherd's back. His sling was in his hand, and he walked toward the giant. When Goliath saw David coming, he looked at him and disdained him. A boy, ruddy, handsome, no armor, no sword. Was this a joke? Was this Israel's answer to his challenge? The giant was insulted. "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And then Goliath cursed David by his gods. "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." It was a death threat, a promise of humiliation, of desecration. The entire valley held its breath. And then David spoke. "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." These weren't the words of a terrified boy. These were the words of a prophet, a declaration of divine victory before the battle even began. Goliath started moving toward David. David ran toward Goliath. Let that sink in. While everyone else had run away from the giant, David ran toward him. He reached into his bag, took out a stone, put it in his sling, and he slung it. The stone flew through the air. It struck Goliath in the forehead. The giant fell on his face to the earth. The undefeated champion, the terror of Israel, the 9-foot giant who had mocked God's people for 40 days, killed by a stone. By a boy, by faith. David ran and stood over the Philistine, took Goliath's own sword, and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled, and the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued them with a great victory. So what does this ancient story mean for you today? Maybe you're facing a giant right now, a giant of fear, of debt, of sickness, of addiction, of doubt, a giant that's been mocking you, defying you, making you feel small and powerless. Maybe that giant has been standing in your valley for 40 days, or 40 months, or 40 years. Here's what you need to know. The size of your giant is irrelevant compared to the size of your God. David didn't defeat Goliath because he was strong. He defeated Goliath because he knew who he was fighting for. You see, everyone else saw Goliath and said, "He's too big to hit." David saw Goliath and said, "He's too big to miss." The difference wasn't in their eyes, it was in their faith. David had spent years in obscurity, in training, in preparation. Those weren't wasted years, they were necessary years. God was building his faith one lion at a time, one bear at a time, one worship session at a time. And when the moment came, David was ready. Not with the weapons everyone else expected, not with the armor everyone else thought he needed, but with the faith he had developed in secret. Here's the truth that will set you free. God doesn't need you to be qualified, he needs you to be available. He doesn't need you to be the biggest, the strongest, the most experienced, or the most impressive. He needs you to be willing. Willing to say, "Is there not a cause?" Willing to remember his past faithfulness. Willing to step onto the battlefield when everyone else is paralyzed by fear. The battle is not yours. The battle is the Lord's. Your giant is already defeated, not by your strength, not by your wisdom, not by your resources, but by the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, the God who specializes in making giants fall. So pick up your stones, the ones God has given you, your unique gifts, your experiences, your testimony, and run toward your giant. Because the same God who was with David in the valley of Elah is with you today. And he doesn't save with sword and spear. He saves by his power, his presence, his promise. Here is the story of David and Goliath. But more than that, it's the story of how God uses the unlikely to accomplish the impossible. May you have the faith to believe that your story can be the same. Amen.